another weekend of violent unrest in Hong Kong. A police officer was slashed in the neck during a confrontation with protesters in a subway station. Authorities fired tear gas to disperse crowds who were vandalising shops and public facilities. Let's get to Dan 10-Kate then. Dan, good to have you with us. So by some measures, even though some of that violence really does sound pretty awful, this weekend wasn't as bad as some previous ones, but there are some events this week that could ramp up the protests, aren't there?
Yes, that's right. I mean, we saw similar scenes of violence that we've seen since early June when these protests began. But overall, the numbers were down over the past weekend. They weren't as bad as the previous weekend, in which we saw the whole subway system shut down. The city was essentially paralyzed. This weekend wasn't as bad as that. The MTR, the main subway operator here, said that they will close the station at 10 p.m. tonight. So some people are calling that a de facto curfew in Hong Kong. And, you know, business is still down, but it's not as bad as it was previously.
Dan, tell me, what's next?
Well, this week, the big event is Carrie Lam, the leader of Hong Kong. She's giving a policy address. This is her annual address in which she's going to announce some new policy measures, but also people are watching to see whether she has any new solutions that could finally end these protests. Expectations are not very high at all, and protesters are just looking for any reason really to come out on the streets. The other major thing is the U.S. House of Representatives might vote on legislation that could boost sanctions on Chinese officials in relation to the protests here. So those are the two events this week that could lead to more protests.